What if I told you the fastest way to make him regret losing you is to do absolutely nothing? No chasing, no texting, no proving your worth, just pure, powerful silence. Because here's the truth. When someone starts to take you for granted, your instinct is to do more, to show up harder, but that only makes you look desperate for validation. Instead, when you ignore him completely, not as a game, but as a shift in energy, everything changes. Silence isn't passive. It's your way of saying, I no longer invest in what depletes me. When you remove your attention, you break the validation loop. You teach him how to treat you. Your absence becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. And in that silence, he starts to feel the weight of losing you. But here's the twist. This isn't about him. This is about you. Because the real win, it's not in his regrets, it's in your glow up. When you stop orbiting around his world and step back into your own, that's when you become magnetic. He doesn't just miss you, he realizes he lost someone extraordinary. So if you're tired of being the one who always shows up, try disappearing and watch what happens next. When you decide to stop reaching out, stop checking in, stop liking his stories or reacting to his posts, something powerful happens. Not just in the dynamic between you and him, but within yourself. I want to be really clear about something here. Ignoring him is not about playing games. It's not manipulation. It's not about trying to punish him or force him into missing you by being silent and cold. No, it's about something far deeper and more important than that. It's about reclaiming your power. See, silence can be misinterpreted by some people as indifference, and they might say, well, I don't want to pretend I don't care. That's not who I am. But the truth is, choosing to stop engaging with someone who isn't showing up for you isn't pretending. It's clarity. It's the decision to stop giving your energy to a situation that has already shown you its priorities. And that clarity often comes after you've given too much, after you've tried to communicate, after you've expressed your needs and were met with inconsistency, half efforts, or worse, silence of his own. So when you ignore him, it's not cold, it's calm, it's quiet strength. It's saying, I've said what I needed to say, and I've seen what I needed to see. And that's incredibly powerful, because what it does is disrupt the rhythm he's gotten used to. Maybe he got used to the idea that you'd always be there, that no matter how little he gave, you'd continue to show up. He didn't have to wonder how you felt, because your attention was his certainty. The moment that attention is no longer guaranteed, something shifts. Now he's no longer in control of the tempo. The texts don't come. The likes don't show up. The good morning messages vanish. He opens his phone and doesn't see your name. For the first time in a while, he has to actually think about you. He has to feel your absence. And here's the thing. People don't value presence until they experience absence. They don't reflect when they're constantly fed. It's only when the meal stops being served that they realize hungry. And in that silence, he begins to ask questions. Wait, did she move on? Did she finally get tired of me not showing up? Why doesn't she care anymore? It's not that you stopped caring, it's that you started caring about yourself more. And that changes everything. Because now, instead of being an option that waits in the background, you become the one that got away. Not because of a dramatic exit, not because of some big speech, but because you simply stopped showing up for someone who wasn't showing up for you. There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't chase, who doesn't explain herself endlessly, who isn't waiting for breadcrumbs or holding on to false hope. There's peace in her distance. There's self-worth in her silence. And that energy, that's what makes him reflect. That's what makes regret possible. Because no one regrets losing someone who was always there, no matter how they behaved. They regret the ones who walked away with grace when they realized their value was being overlooked. You don't have to scream, cry, or beg to be noticed. Your silence speaks louder than any outburst, and it says, I am no longer available for anything less than I deserve. That's not harsh. That's healthy. And it's one of the most empowering things you can do. Now, I know it's hard. When you care about someone, the urge to reach out is strong, to check if they've noticed, to see if they miss you, to just send one more message that might reignite something. But that moment, when you feel that urge, is exactly when you need to pause and remind yourself. Every time I break the silence for someone who hasn't earned my presence, I reinforce the idea that they can disappear and I'll still be here. Let them feel the discomfort. Let them wrestle with the stillness. That's where their clarity comes from. That's when they begin to realize, I had something special and I let it slip. And even if they never say it out loud, they'll know. Deep down, they'll know. You don't need to witness their regret to know it's there. You don't need the apology or the grand gesture or the Instagram quote that mirrors your pain, your peace, your glow, your detachment. That is the evidence. And the best part? Ignoring him doesn't just shift the dynamic with him, it transforms you. It brings your power back home. You start showing up for yourself instead of shrinking for someone else. You stop giving energy to people who haven't even earned your time. And slowly you rise. You evolve. You no longer wait to be chosen because you've already chosen you. So if you're wondering whether ignoring him will make him regret losing you, trust me, it will. But more importantly, it will make you remember what you're truly worth. The truth is, attention is your currency. Every time you give someone your energy, your words, your affection, your time, that's a transaction. And when you're consistently giving that attention to someone who's not showing up, not reciprocating, not matching your effort, what you're really doing is handing out gold coins to someone who doesn't even know their value. It's easy to fall into this pattern, especially when emotions are involved. Maybe he was great at first. Maybe there was chemistry, the kind that makes you believe this could be something real. And because of that early connection, you start giving. You message first, you check in, you let little things slide because you're hoping it'll go back to the way it was. But here's what happens. The more you give without receiving, the more you start depleting your own worth in his eyes. Because we don't value what is always available. We don't chase what's chasing us. Think about how people treat things they have to work for. If someone has to earn your time, your attention, they appreciate it. They value it because they had to show up, be intentional, put in effort. But when you hand it over easily, when you reply instantly, when you initiate every interaction, when you keep showing up for someone who doesn't even notice, they stop seeing it as special. It becomes a given, a default. Background noise. And the irony is, you're doing it from a place of care, of love, of wanting connection. But to him, it just feels like a guarantee. Something he doesn't have to think about because you're not going anywhere. That's the trap. Because now, not only is he not appreciating you, but he's also not regretting losing you. Why? Because in his world, he hasn't. You're still there. Even when he pulls away, even when he's inconsistent, even when he doesn't prioritize you, you're still showing up, you're still responding, you're still making yourself emotionally available. That's not love. That's a pattern. And that pattern teaches him that he can disappear and come back whenever he wants, and you'll be right there waiting. But the moment you stop, truly stop, is the moment everything changes. When you withdraw your attention, when you don't send that message, when you stop liking his post, when you resist the urge to check his stories or subtly make yourself visible, you shift the dynamic. Because now he feels the absence. And let me tell you, that absence is loud. He might not say anything right away. He might not text you the next day. But believe me, the silence echoes. When someone gets used to constant access and that access disappears, it's jarring. He creates confusion, questions. Why isn't she reaching out? Did she meet someone else? Is she over me? Those thoughts don't come when you're still there. They only come when you step away. That's when he starts to reflect. And regret doesn't come from you telling him how much you did. Regret comes from him sitting alone with the realization that the attention, the love, the consistency he once took for granted is no longer there. That's when it hits. That's when the memories start to surface. Not because you reminded him, but because you gave him the space to miss you. But this only works when the withdrawal is genuine. Not a tactic, not a test, not a let me ignore him so he texts me back. It has to come from a place of truth, from you, knowing that your attention is a gift and it should only go to someone who cherishes it. When it comes from that grounded space, your silence has power. Because now it's not about him, it's about you. You deciding to stop spending your currency on someone who keeps giving you pennies in return. This doesn't mean you're playing games. It doesn't mean you're trying to manipulate him. It means you recognize that your attention is valuable, and until someone shows they can handle it with care, you're no longer handing it out freely. That's self-respect, and that's the energy that makes people stop and think. If he's the right person, if he truly valued what you brought to his life, your absence will trigger something real in him. He'll notice the quiet, he'll feel the shift, and he'll come back with clarity, not confusion, with effort, not excuses. And if he doesn't, then you have your answer. You're not losing someone who cared, you're freeing yourself from someone who didn't. That's the impact of reclaiming your attention. Every time you send that message, just to check in, every time you throw out a little emoji, hoping he'll respond, every time you find an excuse to remind him you exist, it's feeding something. And I get it. You're not trying to beg for attention, just reaching out because it feels unbearable to sit in the unknown. It feels more painful to wonder what he's thinking than to take control and do something. But here's what we don't realize. Every time we reach out to someone who's not giving us the effort we deserve, we're not only giving away our power, we're feeding a loop of validation, one where he gets the reassurance, he gets the ego boost, and we get crumbs. See, human beings are incredibly good at responding to patterns. When someone knows that no matter what they do or don't do, you'll still be there, still check in, still find some excuse to keep the thread alive, they stop trying. Why would they put in any effort when you've trained them that your affection is unconditional, even in the absence of effort, respect, or consistency? You think, I just want to remind him I'm still here. But what you're really doing is reminding him that he doesn't need to do anything to have your attention. And let's be honest, people value what they have to earn. If your presence is always available, always accessible, and never costs him anything, it loses its impact. You stop being the prize and become the fallback. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying you should play games. This isn't about being manipulative. It's about breaking a toxic pattern that keeps you in a cycle of giving without receiving. You're not ignoring him because you want to punish him or make him chase you. You're stepping away because you're refusing to keep funding a connection that's not mutual. And that is the most self-respecting move you can make. When you cut that validation loop, when you stop being the one to initiate, to chase, to keep the flame alive, it forces him to look at what he's contributing or not contributing. And here's the uncomfortable truth. For him, when you go quiet, he starts wondering why. He starts questioning whether he still has that same access to you. That comfort he used to feel knowing you'd be there starts to fade. And that discomfort, that's when regret has space to grow. There's a psychological shift that happens. The moment you pull back, you're no longer the reliable source of ego stroking or emotional support. He can't lean on the idea that you'll keep showing up while he keeps doing the bare minimum. That space you've created by being silent, it becomes a mirror, one that reflects his own inaction. And most people don't like what they see when they finally have to face it. But here's the beautiful part. When you stop giving him that validation, you redirect it toward yourself. You begin to rebuild your own self-worth, your own emotional center, instead of outsourcing it to someone who's not holding it with care. You stop asking, why hasn't he texted? And start asking, why am I waiting for someone who doesn't make me feel seen? That silence, it's not empty, it's full of clarity, full of answers. It forces you to confront what you've been accepting. It gives you the opportunity to raise your standards. And that's when the most powerful shift occurs. Not in him, but in you. Because once you see your value clearly, you'll stop negotiating it with people who don't know how to hold it. Now, yes, he may come back. He may reach out when he starts feeling that silence, when he starts realizing you're no longer orbiting his world. But don't let that be your goal. Don't let that be your reason. Let your reason be this, that you deserve to be met with the same energy you give. That you're done chasing breadcrumbs when you're capable of baking the whole damn loaf. That you're no longer interested in performing for someone's half-hearted attention. This isn't about being cold. This isn't about being angry. This is about choosing peace over panic, value over validation, and standards over temporary relief. Because once you decide that your love, your time, your presence, it's no longer on clearance, you become unforgettable. And the moment he realizes you're no longer giving him what used to come so easily, he doesn't just feel the loss, he feels the absence of something rare, something he may never get back. You know, it's funny how people only seem to notice the value of something when it's no longer readily available to them. That consistent presence you once gave, the thoughtful texts, the checking in, the emotional support, the time, the space in your life that you carved out for someone else, became part of the background noise to them. They stopped seeing it as a privilege. It became expected. And that's the danger. When someone starts expecting your energy rather than appreciating it, you've already begun to lose the balance in the dynamic. That's where regret is born. Not in conflict or anger, but in absence. When you choose to step away, to ignore, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, it creates a very different kind of silence. It's not the silence of punishment. It's not a tactic. It's the silence that happens when someone who had access to you suddenly doesn't anymore. And that silence, it speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Because now, for the first time in a long time, they're left alone with the reality of your absence. Think about how much we fill space for other people. We make things easier for them. We remind them we care. We offer our emotional availability, our time, our curiosity about their lives. And often we're doing this for someone who's not matching that energy. And in the beginning, we excuse it. We say they're just busy, or they're not great at expressing themselves. But slowly, almost without realizing it, we teach them that they don't have to show up the way we do, that we'll be there regardless, that they can give less and still keep us in their lives. And that is exactly what starts to erode their respect for what we bring. Now, when you take all of that and remove it completely, when you go quiet, when you stop replying to their lazy messages, when you stop initiating, stop checking in, stop making excuses for their behavior, it leaves a hole. That's what absence does. And in that hole, they begin to feel the weight of what they no longer have. That's when reflection kicks in. That's when they start remembering the little things you did, the way you supported them when they didn't even ask for it, the way you noticed things about them no one else did, the way you made them feel important, seen, desired, even on their worst days. Regret doesn't hit the moment you walk away. It hits when your absence becomes real. When days pass and they realize you're not reaching out, that your name hasn't popped up on their phone, that they're scrolling through social media hoping to get a glimpse of you and it's just silence. That's when they begin to ask themselves, did I mess this up? Did I take her for granted? Why doesn't she care anymore? And they'll go looking for signs of your interest. They'll throw out little bait, maybe a text, a like, a comment, to see if you'll bite. But if you truly stay in your space, they'll get nothing back, and that nothing will be louder than any angry message you could have sent. There's something powerful in realizing that you don't have to explain your absence to someone who didn't value your presence. You don't have to chase, to clarify, to prove that you cared. Because if they didn't see it when you were giving it, it's not your job to convince them now. Your absence is the evidence, and it's the evidence they can't ignore. It forces them to sit with the reality of what they've lost. Not just a person, but the energy, the consistency, the love, the fire, the effort, all of it. But here's the truth. The goal isn't to make them regret losing you. That's just the side effect. The goal is to come back to yourself, to put all that energy you were investing into someone else back into your own life, into your peace, your growth, your glow. The part they'll miss the most isn't even your presence. It's who you become in your absence, because you didn't just walk away, you elevated. And when they finally realize what they had, when they feel that absence so deeply they start to panic, you'll already be in a place where their validation no longer holds the same weight. Because in your silence, you found your worth again. And that's what makes regret hit even harder. You train people how to treat you. That one sentence could change the entire way you approach love, dating, and connection. Because the truth is, every single interaction, every response you give, every boundary you either set or don't set, it's all teaching someone what's acceptable and what's not. Think about it. When someone starts pulling away and you keep chasing, keep texting, keep over-investing, you're not just showing you care. You're signaling to that person that they can get your energy for free. That even when they show up half-hearted or inconsistently or on their terms, you're still there, still waiting, still hopeful, still available. And while that might feel like love or loyalty to you, to them, it quietly says, I don't have to try harder. I don't need to be better. This person isn't going anywhere. And that's not your fault. Most of us were never taught how to draw that line, how to say, no, I deserve more than crumbs. But here's where things change. When you decide to ignore someone who has been inconsistent, flaky, emotionally unavailable, or who has treated you as an option, you're not being cold. You're choosing not to reward bad behavior. You're making a statement without saying a word. I will not be part of my own disrespect. That silence, that lack of response, that decision not to chase after someone who's barely showing up, that's what teaches them. It teaches them that your time has value, that your attention isn't guaranteed, that they can't just leave and come back whenever they feel like it and expect the same welcome every time. You stop being a revolving door and you start becoming a standard they can either rise to or walk away from. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop training someone to expect your love without effort, two things happen. One, if they have any real feelings at all, they start to panic. They realize, wait, I don't have access to her like I used to. They begin to feel the absence of your presence, your laugh, your insight, your care. That energy that used to be theirs so easily is now gone. And it's that gap, that discomfort, that often becomes the trigger for regret. But two, even if they don't come back, what you gain is so much more powerful. You gain peace, you gain clarity, you gain your power back. Because the worst place to be is in a relationship, whether labeled or not, where you're constantly lowering your worth just to keep someone around. That's not love. That's fear. And fear never builds a foundation that lasts. Every time you allow someone to disappear and return at their convenience without consequence, you're reinforcing the idea that your standards are flexible, that they can mistreat you and you'll still be there, hoping, waiting. And yet the moment you decide that you won't tolerate being treated like an afterthought, you raise the bar. People will rise or they won't. But at least now, you're not stuck hoping someone will respect you while simultaneously teaching them that they don't have to. Yes, like expecting someone to stop taking advantage of you while you continue handing them the keys. This is about emotional self-respect. And sometimes that means doing the hardest thing, not reacting, not reaching out, not responding, not feeding their ego, not giving them your light when they only show up to take from it. That silence can feel brutal, but it's also one of the most powerful boundaries you can ever set. Because the truth is, you deserve someone who shows up the first time, not someone you have to constantly remind to value you, not someone who only comes running once you've finally gone quiet. And the longer you keep rewarding inconsistency, the longer you'll be stuck in a cycle that keeps breaking your heart. Let them wonder. Let them question where you went. Let them feel the absence of what they took for granted. And while they're over there realizing what they lost, you'll be over here living your life with integrity, with strength, and with a kind of confidence that doesn't settle for half-effort love. Because when you start training people with your boundaries, not your words, everything changes. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're simply embodying it. And anyone who truly wants to be part of that will rise to meet you there. Silence isn't just quiet. It speaks volumes. One of the biggest mistakes we make when someone pulls away or starts to take us for granted is that we lock all of our energy into trying to get them back. We obsess over what we should say, how we should act, if they've seen our story, if they noticed we're not texting anymore, if our silence is working. But here's the truth. If your silence is just a performance to trigger a reaction, it's not really silence. It's still noise. It's still about them. And that means you're still not free. The real transformation doesn't come when you ignore them to make them miss you. It comes when you actually shift your focus away from them and back onto yourself. Because the most powerful thing you can do is stop playing to the sidelines of someone else's attention and start standing in the spotlight of your own life. That's where your power is. That's where your self-worth lives, not in whether or not they come back, but in who you become while they're gone. So instead of sitting by your phone, hoping they'll text or replaying every interaction to find the moment you lost them, I want you to do something radically different. I want you to redirect that mental and emotional energy toward your own glow up. I mean every sense of the word. Emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. Not because you're trying to make them jealous, not because you want to show them what they're missing, but because you deserve to evolve. Everything begins to shift. Your posture changes, your energy changes, your standards rise. You start becoming someone who no longer needs their validation to feel worthy. That's when real confidence is born. Not when you fake being unbothered, but when you genuinely are. When you're too busy creating a beautiful, meaningful life to worry about who didn't see your worth the first time. And here's the irony. When that happens, that's exactly when they start to feel your absence. Because it's no longer about silence, it's about presence. Your presence in your own life. And that's magnetic. When they look over and see that you didn't just wait for them, you grew without them, that's when the regret kicks in. That's when they start wondering how they ever let someone like you slip away. But by then, you're not the same person anymore. You've outgrown the version of you who needed to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. So if you're in that place right now where you're tempted to reach out, to chase, to prove your value, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, what would happen if I took all of that energy and poured it into me instead? What if I started the gym routine I've been postponing? What if I booked that solo trip I've been thinking about? What if I surrounded myself with people who actually lift me up and remind me of my worth every single day? What if I woke up and my first thought wasn't about them, but about how I can show up for me today? That's how you reclaim your power. Not by waiting for someone to wake up and choose you, but by realizing you were never waiting in the first place. You were preparing, you were becoming, you were building a life so rich and full that whether they come back or not, you're already whole. And look, I get it. Regret is satisfying. It feels good when someone finally sees what they lost, but that feeling is fleeting. You don't want someone to regret losing you more than you want someone to value you while they have you. So stop living for the day they realize your worth and start living like you already know it. Let them feel your absence, not because you disappeared to punish them, but because you appeared more powerfully in your own life than ever before. Let them wonder what changed. Let them sit with a silence that isn't cold, but final. Because once you start living like that, you won't be worried about what they're thinking anymore. You'll be too busy building something they no longer get to be part of. And that's when you know you've won, not because they regret losing you, but because you no longer regret losing them.